generous undertaking, our generosity to give to the mission of sharing God's love in the world, is a powerful witness to the world that Christ is alive and active in God's people. Today, I want to focus on a generous undertaking as a witness to the world. Paul has a problem in Corinth, and it's mostly that they aren't doing what they said they would do. They haven't collected an offering that Paul has bragged about a little bit to the Macedonians, and it's going to embarrass the Macedonians, and it's going to embarrass Paul and Christ, most importantly. So the question I'd like you to think about this week when it comes to generosity and offering is, what witness does your generosity make to the world? What does it teach your children? What does it say to those who know you best? And then secondly, I'd like you to think about how the work that we do together, this generous undertaking, manifest in the mission and ministry at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, produces thanksgiving in the community. How is it that through the food pantry and through the offerings we make, through the teaching that we do and the preaching and worship that we provide, how is it that people give thanks to God because of our generosity? So when Titus shows up in Macedonia to tell Paul that the Corinthians have not taken the offering that they promised, Paul has a little bit of a problem. You see, when he talked to the Macedonians, he told them how generous the Corinthians were. He told them how these folks in Corinth were going to take up a large collection to send to Jerusalem. And even though he tells us that he did not ask the Macedonians to take part in the relief for the saints at Jerusalem, they begged for the opportunity to do so. They were as poor as the folks in Jerusalem, but the Corinthians and the promise of a big offering had gotten them excited. They figured that if rich people in Corinth could share, then with what little they had, they could share a bit too. And so when Titus shows up and says the offering isn't coming so well, Paul has a problem, a bad witness. Now, it is not necessary for me to write to you about the ministry to the saints, for I know your eagerness, which is the subject of my boasting about you to the people of Macedonia, saying that Achaia, Corinth, has been ready since last year, and your zeal has stirred up most of them. The folks in Macedonia are excited by the prospects of joining with the Corinthians in this generous undertaking. But now they hear from Titus that it isn't taking place. Paul's solution is to tell the Corinthians, I am sending the brothers, Titus and others, in order that our boasting about you may not prove to have been empty in this case, so that you may be ready, as I said you would be. Otherwise, if some Macedonians come with me and find that you are not ready, we would be humiliated, to say nothing of you, in this undertaking. What we know from how Paul wrote was that in order to make sure that everybody knew the offering was above board, Paul would gather not only the offering, but witnesses from that community to travel with him to make sure that they saw the offering get to Jerusalem. So his little band keeps getting larger. And so the plan is that if the Macedonians are going to give some offering, one or two of them will be with Paul when he gets to Corinth to pick things up. And it's going to look bad for Paul. It's going to look bad for the Corinthians. But it's going to look even worse for Jesus Christ and the power of the gospel. So Paul continues, so I thought it necessary to urge the brothers to go on ahead to you and arrange in advance for this bountiful gift that you have promised, so that it may be ready as a voluntary gift and not as an extortion. Paul sends Titus back to make sure that the offering is in order, so that if Macedonians are with him, they experience the joy they expect, the joy that they've come to believe in because of Jesus Christ. Paul sends the letter ahead so that this gift may be ready. And he tells them, make sure it's a voluntary gift. I'm not trying to extort you of anything. I'm not trying to shame you of anything. You know Jesus Christ, and you know the motivation for your gift. Paul then assures the Corinthians, you will be enriched in every way for your great generosity, which will produce thanksgiving to God through us. For the rendering of this ministry not only supplies the needs of the saints, but it also overflows with many thanksgivings to God. You see what Paul says here? It's not just that they're going to be helping out the people in Jerusalem, but that when the people in Jerusalem give thanks to God that they've been helped, it will be the Corinthians and the Macedonians and others who've given to the cause that produce thanksgiving to God. Their witness will be a powerful proof of God in the world. To sum up, Paul teaches that Christian giving is a witness to our faith, for good or for ill. When we are generous and filled with the Spirit of Christ, people see that. When we speak of being Christian and we are not generous, well, that speaks as well. And so Paul challenges us to make our belief and our faith match our actions when it comes to generosity. Our offering expresses literally a money where your mouth reality. Knowing that the things that we believe are not just talk but actions, people will see powerfully that Christ transforms. Our common generosity speaks to a world about the power of Christ to love in action. In a world where selfishness is what really drives most of us as human beings, when we transcend that because of the love of Christ and are generous, well, that speaks to the world about the power of Christ. And when we are able to come together in a generous undertaking to support the work of sharing God's love in the world, we offer a way for people to help praise God. They give thanksgivings because of the work that we've done. This week, I'd like to ask you to do a couple of things. To think about what our daily actions, including our offerings, say about our faith. What does it say to you, to your children, and to others in the world? And also, how does the world give thanks for God who works through HTLC, through the ministries that we do? How is it that people say, God, through those people over there, is present? Thanks be to God.